The Family Court Journal has quietly shaped professional thinking in the family courts for years, creating space for reflection, challenge, and new ideas from those working at the sharp end of practice. In this episode, I am joined by John and Catrina from the editorial board to explore what the journal is, how it's curated, and why it remains such a vital resource for practitioners. So, for listeners who may not know, what is the Family Court Journal and what role does it play within the profession?
Well, the Family Court Journal is a publication that currently is produced twice a year. It's a fairly significant document. It's digitally produced now. It used to be printed, and what we try to put into the journal are a range of articles that are current and interesting for the readers, all relevant, of course, to their work with children and families. It can be contributions from eminent experts in their field, research. Sometimes it's from the judiciary, medical people occasionally when it's relevant. And that's really the essence of it. That's the history as well, just to produce articles that, if they weren't there, it might mean that there's either gaps in the reader's knowledge or understanding about things, or it just simply opens up a few doors and provides signposting to them so that they can perhaps pursue some more research and look a bit deeper into whatever it is that the article is talking about.
Can you tell us a bit about the editorial board, who you guys are, and how do you decide what topics make it into the journal?
The editorial board, Trina, who's with us today, has been involved with the journal the longest. So she has quite a wealth of experience of journal processes and procedures, and has seen it come and go a little bit over time. But certainly, as the current editor, I welcome all the time Catrina's input in so many ways. In addition to Catrina, Catrina is an independent social worker still practicing. I believe it's mainly in public law work, so still very current. We have Paul Walker, who is also a public law worker with CAFCAS in the Birmingham area. He is also somebody who seems to know anybody and everybody, which is good, and is also a person who is able to hunt down and contribute with articles that come to the table for us to consider. And then we have Peter Brooks, who is now a retired family court practitioner, but a tremendous wealth of information, recently retired. And he's still quite active within NAPO and the family court section. He brings a tremendous amount of experience.
But as John said, I've been involved going back 2005, 2004, well, probably before that, so quite a long time. And I think the composition, when you look back, it's changed. At the moment, you've got a group of people on the board who are directly involved with CAFCAS or recently involved with CAFCAS. And looking back, we have also had other people like academics on the board. So I think it's not a fixed thing. We would be very happy to have a mix of people in terms of background. They clearly need to have some connection with the family court system in terms of interest and experience, but we would very much, we're kind of like want to be open, want to be diverse, want to have a good mix of skills and knowledge and experience in there. So, we would very much appreciate anyone who's listening to this, anyone who reads the journal, if they think they have something to offer in an ongoing way, someone's interested in being on the board, we would really welcome um, you know, interest, other people who want to come along and just have a chat, see what it's about, even if they just want to explore it as an option without committing themselves. We'd really welcome interest from people out there who have something, who are interested in what we do.
So recently we connected with David Opie, who is from Today's Family Lawyer. He's the head journalist, I believe, and he's able to put our way a wealth of potential pieces that we can include in the journal. It's not necessarily that we just lift and paste and all the rest of it. We actually look a bit deeper and maybe make some more inquiries and research ourselves as well. But it just provides stimulation, really, and using that word again, signposting, for us to um, just try and keep the articles very interesting, very current.
I mean, we obviously have our own connections, our own kind of interests. So there may be something that's very current, a kind of topic at the moment that's around. So that might be changes in practice. So for example, at the moment, there's the Pathfinder program that CAFCAS is seeking to roll out as a new way of operating across the board in private law. So we might be looking to people who are involved in some of the pilot schemes to write something about that. We may approach a solicitor or a judge to get their take on how that's working. And we might speak to someone in CAFCAS about what they're trying to achieve. So we take a topic and then think, who could we approach to contribute and write something on that? It might be that pick up something ourselves just in our travels. We may attend a conference, read an article and think, that's really interesting. That would make a good article for the journals. I think there are also the different sources as to where articles come from. But again, we would welcome ideas from readers to say, how about doing something on this? We're not the fount of all wisdom. So we like to throw the net wide and try and be current, try and be relevant, sometimes give a historical perspective on how things have changed. We've done that in the last couple of editions, a sort of sweep of, some topic and how that's changed, say, in the family courts or in society, an approach to whatever it might be. And so all and every kind of source is valid really, and we can get ideas for articles from anywhere.
We're very keen to have suggestions from our readership as to what they would like to see in the journal, or if anybody wants to write an article, they're very welcome to get in touch, talk it through, see how we can produce that. They can do it anonymously if they're a little bit worried about the content and sticking their head above the parapet. We can accommodate that. And it doesn't have to be heavy reading. It's just got to be relevant and informative.
So, do you offer support for members who may be thinking of, there's an idea that I would like to really work up and write? Are you guys able to assist them with that? What kind of support do you have?
Well, it hasn't happened too much so far, I have to say, but there is a reference in the journal that goes out each time now saying that the editorial board do welcome contact being made by readers if they have an idea for an article or they'd like to contribute an article. And we've just introduced a new section. I think the past two editions have had a little section that's entitled Letters to the Editor.
We welcome short pieces as well as long pieces. And yeah, it may be very short, a few paragraphs commenting on something. So I think all of that is that we really welcome it, and we really want it to be a place of reaction and interaction between practitioners and other people who may read it, so other disciplines, say lawyers, judges, other people who work in this sphere, that may have a slightly different take. So we really want it to be a place of debate and reflection and inquiry, people really thinking about, is this the only way to do it? Is this the best way to do it? How could we do this differently? And all of those things.
That leads me nicely into my next question, because I was going to ask, can you remember an article or maybe some articles that really did spark discussion, debate, or probably even change in practice?
There was one piece that came to address this, but it was very relevant and probably still is, and it's primarily to do with mums who feel that they've got no option because of their circumstances, often to do with an abusive partner, then just flee out of the jurisdiction to a country where there are no Hague Convention retrieval options. So one place would be somewhere like Turkey, for example. And that tied in with another aspect that was troubling some people in various cases, and that's the introduction of evidence by so-called experts. So they were actually able to provide information to the court, but it wasn't supported by traditional qualifications. So that created an interesting debate between two sources of information. I think we produced one article. It was read by somebody who then wasn't happy with the content of that article. And to some extent, that was fair enough. That was fair comment. And that created the initial article, then another significant article that was almost in response to the first one. And then there's a little bit of trailing after that just to sort out one or two loose ends. But there's nothing that can't be challenged or looked into more deeply through that process.
I think it's the other thing, looking back over the historical or the older editions over the last sort of 20 years, you get a broad sweep of different topics that have very much kind of come to the fore. In the early days of Kafka's, which was quite a difficult time of transition, new organization, people coming in. You can imagine it was fairly chaotic. There was a lot of change, not all of it kind of welcome, and things being tried out. So it felt to me, looking, I was just reminding myself yesterday when I was looking at some of the old editions, how we had a lot of articles about kind of existential angst, really, people talking about the convergence, how things were terrible, how it was much better in the old organization. Um, and just to kind of, it was a place where people could vent some of that stuff and explore some of that stuff. And yeah, part of a kind of a journey, really, of kind of coming together with people from um, other organizations to create Kafkas and learning about each other and how to respect each other.
I think we're very keen to hear about people's practice, especially if they've got something a little bit new going on, if they're developing some different ways of working with children and families. There's not a lot of change that can occur, I don't think, but even if it's just a small initiative that's being explored, it'd be really interesting to hear about that because it may be something that can then be duplicated in other parts. We're also quite keen to hear of any unusual cases that can be discussed, obviously redacted and anonymized, but just cases that there's been some twists and turns and perhaps possibly even some outcomes that haven't quite been the ones that the practitioner might have expected or wanted.
'Cause, I guess that ties back to what Katrina was saying as well, like, these kind of articles really date stamp what is happening, across the organization, across a period of time. And I guess so you've kind of spoken about the types of things you'd like to see in future editions, but is there anything else, like maybe specific submissions from specific demographics or a particular perspective that you think is often overlooked in the journal?
Funny you say that. It just occurred to me that one of the changes that we've seen is that we have recently had a couple of articles from people with lived experience of the system. So that's two individuals, adults, guy in his 30s, guy in his 40s, who had been in care themselves and, had a really interesting journey. And so one of them now runs a housing association for young people who have been in care. And he wrote an article, the edition before last, about his vision for how the care system could work much better, really radical new way of looking at things and to support young people. And it was a complete revamp, He would say not any more expensive for the state, but just putting the resources in at a different point, and it's more likely to help young people. And then in our last edition, we had again someone I'd heard on the radio who was a published poet, and he has direct experience of the care system, and he now runs a like an arts organization where they very much want people with care experience to come and share their experience through poetry, through performance, as a sort of I suppose to something which is quite therapeutic and cathartic for them, but also informs the rest of us, as to what some of the issues are, and that was really interesting.
Just more than welcome to receive anything from anyone that just completely includes anything that may be cultural or the demographic is just wide open to any contributions because there may be different ways of working in different communities. I mean, at the moment, I'm looking at doing an article about homeschooling. More and more people seem to be looking at that as an option. But the downside of it is that in some cases it's done for the wrong reasons. And then children can become very vulnerable and very isolated. We also welcome, you've already touched on poetry, Katrina. It just adds relevant additional bits to the journal that might be thought provoking or just entertain a little bit or just bring a smile if it's appropriate in the way that the poem has been worded. If anybody is thinking of an article, we look for around 5,000 words as a bit of a starting point. It can be a bit less. We can discuss if it's going to go a bit longer.
NAPO members will be sent the Family Court Journal if they're in Family Court section. If you're not a member of NAPO, how do you access the journal?
Well, I think since we've become digital, it goes on to the NAPO website or the family court section part of the website. The last one was sort of winter 2025, so the next one will be spring, early summer 2026. But I believe that it's available to a wider readership who aren't NAPO members. And we encourage that because that means that academics are beginning to realize that there's something there that might be worth reading, and we could try and target academics in various universities and things like that, just to remind them that there is a journal that they can look at. It may be that it ties in with some of their social work courses that the students that they're teaching. They might be interested then in seeing it, particularly if they're going to come forward and become family court practitioners or in some other allied um, profession.
If today's conversation has sparked an idea, a question, or even a challenge to current practice, the Family Court Journal wants to hear from you. Contributions don't have to be academic, lengthy, or even attributed. They just need to be thoughtful, relevant, and grounded in experience. You can access the journal via the NAPO website, and if you're interested in contributing or joining the conversation, get in touch with the editorial board. Thanks for listening.